to our next presenter, which is Peter Shay. Welcome, Peter.
Welcome. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Peter is presenting today using Smode for online events. I'm very excited to see your presentation today, as this is a tool I've been curious about and have not had much time to spend with. And I think you've taken the pandemic as a real learning dive into using this tool for work.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting to use this. So just a little small part of Smode for our online events has kind of helped us with trying to figure out what to do in a distributed team workflow.
Yeah. Well, Matt and I will leave you to your presentation. Thank you for being here today.
All right. Thank you both. Well, today I wanted just to take a few minutes and talk about a couple of the tricks we've found to solve some of the questions that we're seeing, some of the challenges we're seeing as we've pivoted from being mostly in-person event production to a lot of online event production. Some of the tools that we use for these online events are kind of a switcher in a box approach. They do amazing things, but they tend to kind of collate several different positions all into one operator, and that, when you have a smaller production, is fine because you can do a lot of things with just one person. But when you have a bigger production, or you've got lots of changes coming in, and you have an audio change, and you got a graphics change, and video roll gets updated, and all of this stuff starts to happen all at once, one person tends to get a little overwhelmed. So we asked the question, how do we break up some of those roles again in this distributed software-based approach? And one of those was Smode. Smode was a program that we were using before for some of our bigger events. It's a media server app. And we found that it was an answer to a couple of the questions. So without any further ado, I decided this week to go ahead and pre-record the presentation, since I wasn't able to demonstrate vMix and Smode and all of these other parts of the question and cut my own show at the same time. So I figured it'd be prudent just to pre-record. So with that, here's a presentation of a couple of the examples of the workflows we found. Thank you. So what is Smode? Smode's an interesting program. It's kind of like Photoshop. It's huge and deep. Photoshop, you can do a lot and only know half of it. Same with Smode. Smode is a 3D and 2D compositing engine. It's very, very real-time oriented. I like to think of it as no render, because you can make a change and just hit play again and it's already ready to go. It is a media server, and it integrates into larger systems like a media server. You can go from just an HD output to dozens of servers working together doing a big arena level production with tens of thousands of pixels of wide video walls and stuff like that. It does 3D projection mapping and all of that kind of stuff as well. But for today's example, we're just going to focus on just a small part of what Smode can do, specifically for our online productions. We're going to take a look at a quick workflow for name titles, for some over-the-shoulder graphics, video transitions, and then lastly, I want to touch on a new beta feature that has come out recently that may change how we do some of our live updates. So let's dive in. Let's take here's the Smode interface. Got your typical files on project files on the left and assets, preview window in the center, and then all of your parameters and settings everywhere else. So first thing I want to do is play in a name key. So we've got our name title, pretty generic template. All of these assets for the name title specifically are built into Smode using Smode objects and elements, which lets us do some pretty interesting things with color. So down here, I've got all of these elements, all the colors are tied together. So if it's a common black or a common gray or white or orange or whatever, those elements are all tied down to these parameters down here. So if I make a quick change, let's say creative director calls up on comms and says, hey, that color orange is just not on brand anymore. Something in the translation from source down to the stream to the live output is doing something to that. And he said, okay, give me some more saturation and make that a little bit brighter. So I boost that up, reapply that pops just a little bit more, and they're happy. Maybe he gets back on and says, hey, can you make that white not quite so punchy? And so I dial down that white just a little bit, and that ties together. So anything that's tied to that white or that orange is an easy update. So let's say this is a template, and you've got a client that comes in and says, hey, our client colors are blue and yellow. And we go, all right, well, I can plug in those blue and yellow, make a change, and apply that, and instantly all the different pieces to that change. And you might say, well, that's not that big a deal. Photoshop and After Effects and some of the other major graphics engines have similar features, but it's kind of cool when you start tying it into all of your show elements. So let's take a look at a show bumper. So if we play off our name key and play on our bumper, we've got those same client colors, but let's switch back to our orange and white and play that bumper again. So now we've got our orange and grays. Pretty easy transition, and they all are all pointing to the same parameter. So not a huge feature, not anything life-shattering, but this is just kind of one workflow trick, one workflow tool that you stack on with a couple other workflow tools, and you start having a better package, a better ability to say yes, a better ability to do last-minute changes without the stress of, did it get work, did we get the file, did it sync, did we get the right file, did it have the right codec? We're simplifying that process with these quick, easy updates. Lastly, I want to show you the an over-the-shoulder style graphic using the same sort of color palette stuff. So if I grab the background and then we play in a little graph bar, all of these are 3D elements rendering live in Smode. And let's say again we're going to switch to the client colors from blue and yellow. So easy change for that design as well. Let's jump into vMix and see how does that work in that workflow. So here's our vMix interface. We've got our kind of screen graphic here and live input there. And this is our Smode input. It is currently, I'm using NDI with key and fill tied together. We're doing NDI a lot for our virtual presentations because a lot of our systems aren't connected by traditional SDI workflow, which I miss SDI a lot. But NDI is making an okay substitute. So I've got this overlaid on top of everything on layer 4, and that lets our Smode operator say, okay, we're just going to bring in a bug, we're going to bring in a name title, and for me as the vMix operator, this is all one layer overlay. So they can control taking themselves in and out. I don't have to worry about triggering all of that. They can take that either doing it independently or based off the script or the show caller calling separate elements at different times. I can focus more on the video switch aspect of the show and less on the graphics. So, but that works great for name keys and bugs where the call doesn't have to be exactly precise. But if you're doing a video transition like a stinger, and so stinger basically is just a video file with alpha, you play it, and the video switcher will play the video file on, it covers up the screen, and then the video switcher makes a change underneath, and then the stinger plays off and reveals the next source that the video switcher switched to. So when we started playing with name keys and bugs and some other elements from Smode, I quickly saw an opportunity to say, hey, can we integrate the stinger transition with vMix and Smode together? So where Smode is doing that live video rendering, and couldn't do a stinger transition as well. But the key here is if we have two operators hitting go at the same time, a stinger transition, you have to have tighter automation than that. So we ended up finding a workflow solution to use MIDI out of vMix triggering Smode, so that when vMix thinks that it's triggering a stinger transition, Smode plays the video, plays the overlay. And so it all works together, and the timing is dead on and repeatable. So we don't have any human lag in that particular scenario. So let's see what that looks like. So we've got our name key, we're going to play that off, and then we're going to queue up a video roll. So I've got two stingers here. One is just a plain stinger, and then stinger 2 is triggering a bumper, which has a title. So let's start with the bumper. And then when it plays off, we've got the video rolling underneath. And of course, you can customize the duration and the transitions because all of that's custom made in Smode. So then when the video is finished, then we can just use stinger 1 to get out of that video. So what we have is Smode and vMix are talking to each other, and we're able to make very precise transition cues and only one person has to hit a button to trigger and start the dominoes for that transition. So pretty interesting little integration between vMix and Smode. Not earth-shattering, but you start adding up these little workflow tricks and tips and help. It makes a bigger picture overall. You're able to say, okay, that stinger transition's too long. Well, the Smode operator can go in, dial in a couple of keyframes, and make that update real quick. There is no re-render, there's no file transfer, there's no syncing, there's no updating. It's just all done in the Smode application. And so that's, again, you're starting to see a picture of where your workflow for your live events or your online events is able to adapt a little bit more easily. And that seems to be, the word adapt seems to be the theme for this year, as far as finding ways to reinvent how we're working remotely, how we're accommodating clients who are working remotely as well. And the more adaptable we are, the more flexible we are, these kinds of little workflow tricks are making our progress and our projects easier. So next up, I want to dive into the that last feature I mentioned, which is the live text updates. So if you start getting into with all the virtual events that we're doing a lot more project management, project planning, project tracking, information passing back and forth between teams is all being done online in the cloud. We're using a lot of Dropbox, a lot of Google Docs, a lot of file syncing and emailing and going back and forth, which is not unusual. We were doing that even before 2020 hit, and we weren't while we were working together in the same room. But the difference now that we saw was an opportunity to say, okay, we're using all of these cloud technologies to communicate between the production team and clients and everybody. What if we could use some one of those same tools in our graphics workflow? And Smode came out with a beta version update and included the Python programming language inside of Smode now. So that brings a lot of the resources that the Python programming language has, which Python's used for lots of things, from big data sets, trying to visualize huge data sets, or creating some of your web apps online. It's a super flexible programming language. And we found some modules that help us to tie into Google Sheets. So now within Smode, we're able to reach out and touch a Google Sheet and pull in information from there. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like for us. We've got this Google Sheet. It's got a couple of names in here. We've got my name. We've got Han Solo. We've got Tony Stark. We've got Bruce Banner. So just having some fun with these names today, but we can take all of these names, and in Smode, we can use the same name template and bring in each of those names one at a time. And so we're pulling the information from the Google Sheet and implementing it into the text layers in Smode. So let's see what that looks like. So we play in our name key. We've seen that one before, so we're going to play in an update to number 10 and pull that information. So then we're going to update, and let's say they say, nope, change. Next one that's coming up is Matt Murdock. So what you're seeing now is we're using the same compo. We're not using duplicates with different names built into them, and we just copy and paste and change the text. We're able to use the same compo, which is just one template, and we're pulling information from the Google Sheet. So let's say we're going to pull in my name again, and we look at that and we go, you know what, that title just really doesn't do him justice. It's just kind of boring. So let's just go with Texan. So producer, let's just know name title's been updated. Pull that information, boom. So you just saw me update that on Google Sheet, and now I'm able to click the update button in Smode and pull that information in. And so if a producer has one of the panelists cancels and we got to add another panelist, easy update. They just update that row or add it up to the bottom, let us know which row and where it is. And when we get to that moment in the show, pull up that number, hit recall, and play that out. And now we've got that name ready to go where we didn't have it moments before. So pretty interesting thing that can also work with our bumpers. So let's say our next segment is number 3. And so pull that in. What is Smode? All right. Well, let's pull in segment 4, update. play that same bumper in, and now we've got vMix integration. So pretty easily you can start to see, okay, well, we've got some kind of core puzzle pieces to our show. We've got name titles, we've got bumpers, and we have this, and we have that. And now we're able to easily go, okay, we don't have to have every single element pre-rendered out necessarily. That's right for a lot of shows, but sometimes you need the flexibility to say, well, how do we update that quickly? How do we update that easily? So Smode is able to let us, in our distributed workforce, our distributed team across the country, we're able to easily say, okay, well, that information is accessible in the cloud. We can see that. Instead of having to copy and paste and make another version in Photoshop or After Effects and render that out, and then we're kind of stuck with what we've got rendered out at the moment, we can now integrate where we're getting the information from the producer and bring it right into the graphics program. Obviously, you need to put some bumpers on that safety net. Say, hey, not just anybody has access to this particular spreadsheet. They are responsible for spelling and making sure they update and communicating when updates are made. But as you can see, that can eliminate several barriers and several points of bottlenecks or slowdowns when we're able to pull that information from the source, bring it right into the program, and voila, we're rendering in real time. So interesting updates. This technology has allowed us to tie together some of the workflow tools that we were using for other parts of the production. Now we're bringing them deeper into how we're doing our online shows. So that is what I wanted to show you today, but let's take a quick recap and see how does that look like in a kind of a mini show. So let's go back to vMix. We're going to reset just a little bit. So we've kind of got the top of the show rehearsal. Show caller calls in our bug, says, all right, we're going to go into our first presenter, bring in our presenter live online. Now we're going to bring in their name key. All right, we've got their name key. Hold on, wait a second. Wow, that title is cute and all. Let's go ahead and get them back to their actual title. So we go back in. Producer punches that update into the Google Sheet. And as you know, with Google Sheets, you don't even really have to save. It's all saving live. It's pretty awesome. So then Smode operator pulls that information in again, and now it's updated live. Typically, we wouldn't update that while it's on screen, but we're in rehearsal, and we get a confirmation. Everyone signs off, and that's good. Okay, so we're going to go to the next segment. So first thing we're going to do is update our bumper title. So play off our name key, and then set up our video roll, and we stinger 2. Smode triggers that title, and we're rolling that video. At the end of that video, we can stinger back out. So no title on the stinger. And then we've got a couple of graphics for this presenter. So let's bring in our sidebar graphic and our interesting little information about the last couple of decades. All real-time graphics rendering. And again, if they decided that this needed to be a seasonal Happy Holidays segment, we could play that sidebar back graphic in, and now we've got our Happy Holidays colors. Same template, as easy as just switching color sets, and play that back off. So you're starting to see how video rolls and stinger transitions and name keys and all of that happening more in a real-time workflow instead of a render and import and sync and update workflow can kind of smooth out some of those bottlenecks in the production workflow if you've got to do last-minute changes or you don't really know exactly, especially if you're doing a live show and you've got people coming on and off and it's a little more hairy. This tool can allow you to react and adapt to that and still add some of those elements that we're used to. All right, so that was examples of just 3 of the things that we've found to be exceptionally useful in our workflows recently. I hope that kind of shined a light on maybe give you some ideas for what might be useful in your workflow. I think one of the big takeaways that to kind of step away from the technical that I walk away with this is kind of separating out those roles and letting your operators specialize instead of trying to wear all the hats for the production. So your graphics operator can be able to take updates from the producer while you're still doing a rehearsal with your show caller, or your audio guy can help alleviate you when you've got 15 things going on at the same time. So that's kind of the philosophy we were trying to find, and Smode was able to answer a couple of those questions for us. So that's pretty much what I had for us today. I wanted to thank you for having me here.
Great. We're really happy to have you with us today, Peter. Thank you so much for the presentation and for the, insight into what Smode has done for your team. Can you tell us a little bit about, you said you had used Smode before. Was there a moment when you were tackling a specific problem that you had the light bulb of like, I'm going to take it this direction with this tool?
I would say probably middle of the spring, our online presentations were getting more and more complex, and we were just collaborating as a team, and we were like, well, wait a minute, we can do a lot of these graphics inside our switcher or inside our switcher program, but why not offload that? And can we figure out a way with the cloud systems that we were using to do that in the cloud? And we were able to figure out NDI and get that working, so that took that load off of the vMix operator at that time, and we were able to take care of some of those name keys, take care of some of the video playback separately.
Where are these running?
Is
this both on this cloud? Yeah.
Yeah, they can. Smode runs on our media servers that we've had in the shop for quite a while and done all of our live shows with, but it also runs in the cloud. We're able to run our online presentations and our graphics programs in the Amazon cloud systems as well. So we were surprised how well that worked.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been surprised at what you can do in Amazon's cloud.
I'm sure Amazon has got a whole new subset of customers this year.
So with what you've built so far using Smode, is the plan to keep advancing the capabilities and look for new ways to use it for these, virtual type projects?
Yeah, we were dreaming as a team a couple days ago, and I want to look for opportunities maybe to pull in if there's any other live information. One of my colleagues and I were talking about possibly, doing some fancy social media feeds or something like that. If we could find a way to pull that in, or if there's a spreadsheet information, we can pull that in. But really, those are kind of limited use case scenarios. Just the day-to-day boring graphics, like a name title that we all kind of get. It's like, oh yeah, we got to do one of those. That's where we're finding the most benefit to our workflow, is just making those easier to update, easier to apply. And then Smode is fairly easy once you get it set up. If you want to tweak on it, it's easy to update. If you know any of the regular post-production tools, Smode's pretty intuitive for us to learn. So that's really where we're seeing the most benefit.
Anyone in our audience, if you have questions, remember you can post them in our Discord chat, and we'll pass them on to Peter. So I always have had Smode on my to-do list of things to look at and learn, and there's never time. So it's very exciting for me to see a little more into it.
Yeah, I feel a little like I'm cutting it short because it's so deep. It can do so many different things, but this was just a couple of examples we've been using recently. I can't wait till we get into big rooms again and we're able to do things on a larger scale, because the real-time rendering with particles and some of the other effect engines and whatnot will really shine on a bigger screen like that. So those are things I'm dreaming about, and we're going to be prototyping and figuring out what we can kind of show off and see where our clients want to take it.
Very cool.
Yeah. Are there any system timing things between Smode and vMix? And I mean, obviously you have latency on incoming signals from various sources. Sure. But since Smode and vMix are in theory both in the cloud,
we haven't had any issues. In fact, the cloud systems that we've been able to spin up have been faster than any of the computers we've built in the shop. So we're able to throw lots of CPUs at that problem and a big virtual GPU, and we haven't had any major lag between the two of them. NDI is a few frames of lag there, but for graphics, we haven't had that problem at all.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot more opportunities there. So
yeah, definitely scratching the surface.
I'm curious. I'm curious, as all of our work has shifted in the pandemic, do you find your clients are coming to you, and because we're now in an environment that is all screen, that their
Mhm.
expectation of your team's contribution has expanded beyond what you would normally be responsible for in a live production?
Yes, yeah. We, used to be, we would specialize in the screens. We would make sure all the pixels lit up and mapped everything correctly, and all the servers were working well together, and reliably and consistently. And now we're doing the video rolls and the audio and remote video calls, as well as graphics, and trying to make sure. And then we're tying all those systems together. So prompter operator is now tying into our system, whereas we used to be neighbors at back of house, but they never really touched us. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've found that you have to work together a lot more, even though we're further apart.
And do you think some of those roles will get returned to those prior team members who might exist in a live production, or do you think there's going to be some kind of hybrid evolution of the way these tools are getting used for, a virtual production solution when we go back to live?
I'll answer that two ways. A lot of the team members that we're working with, both on our team and freelancers, are coming from the live event space. So they get what our clients asking for. They get the nomenclature and the pacing and the workflow. So that's not a shocker. The tools are different, but they understand the goal, and that's been important to us, is to have someone who understands what the producer from the agency who works for the other agency is talking about. But I don't know. What we're hearing from the clients is, it's when we are able to meet together more and more, it's going to be a hybrid. I don't think virtual remote communication and being able to pull in an online audience is going to diminish. I think that's just going to make conferences and online corporate events bigger, with the people locally in the room and outside the room. So I think we'll continue to do a lot of this.
I was going to
Oh, I'm
ask
happy to hear
a
that.
hybrid.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a hybrid of the question Laura asked, which is, are there things you're offering now in virtual events that if suddenly those weren't available, you would miss them? So you've been using Smode, you've been using, I don't know whether you've been using vMix, but Switchers
Mm-hmm.
Live. With the increased integration, ability to scale the amount of processing that you can apply to these things, if you end up on a show site in 6 months, optimistically, and you're cut off from the internet and you're just using the stuff out of your shop, is
Right.
is that going to be less of a show potentially?
I think technically we're starting to realize we can spin up a copy of a server system in a matter of hours, as opposed to building that from scratch, having to get the parts from all over the place and build them up and burn the hours in to test that system. With our physical systems, we definitely spend a lot more time, and we can't spin up a whole nother, if a client asked us to do another in-person event and we put all our servers there, we can't say yes to the next one. Whereas now virtually, if we have the people, which that's the commodity right now, is the people, we're able to say yes to as many as we can staff. And that's
I hope
blowing my mind
everyone
right
hears
now.
that. No, I hope everyone hears that. Is, if they're, it's a matter of training on the tools that are most effective for the time we're in. Those jobs
Right.
are out there and they will continue to grow. And I hope people are open to the idea of retraining in these tools, because I really believe those opportunities will continue to expand.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's not something that I would think was on any of our 2020 sort of prediction lists in terms
No.
of industry moves to cloud.
Right.
And yet so we have a debate about sort of how these things scale. And so there's analog to digital, and then there's sort of networking and shows getting very networked. And the idea is that shows are going to have server rooms. And then sometime later we move to the cloud. And to me, the whole show site server room is like Blu-ray. We're just going to go right past it.
Yep. That's a perfect example, actually. I like that. Yeah. So that's when what we're seeing. We're talking with our clients about how do we do more. We've had clients say, "Hey, we want to do 4 shows and we're like, "You said simultaneously, right?" And those are the conversations we're having right now, and just going, "Okay, yeah, we can do that."
Well, thank you so much, Peter. It's really great to have you a part of Framework and introduce the community to a technology we haven't been able to talk about yet. So it's great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.